through this, and you may not have liked it.
Tell them about the quiz too.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me see how this is gonna work. My name's Mark, and this is on banding, because a lot of people don't understand what banding is. So, where am I pointing this? Okay, your magic thing
Is it, let me check and see if it's turned on.
What's turned on, this thing?
Yeah.
How do you turn it on?
I'll show you. No.
Okay.
That should work.
Now,
That I know how to do.
there you go. Okay, what is bird banding? All right, what bird banding is you catch birds and then you put a band on them. A piece of metal that has a unique 9-digit number on it. And the reason you do this is because there are times when you need to be able to tell different birds apart. Because birds look alike, right? It's hard to say, there's Joe the bird, there's Sam the bird. Okay, you can't do that. You've got to be able to tell them apart somehow if you're going to study them. All right, so the bands that you put on, let's see, what's the pointy thing? Okay. There are different sizes. The biggest ones are for white pelicans, and then they go all the way down to hummingbird size bands. And most of them are made of aluminum, a few of them are made of stainless steel, but they all have a unique 9-digit number on them. So I'm going to pass these around, and these are just some of the bands. The one that has a single one on it, this is called a lock-on band. This is the one we put on raptors, birds of prey, because they can get the band off. So it has a little piece of metal that kind of locks over. And then these are just smaller bands, and they're what we call butt-in bands, because you pull them apart, put them on a leg, and then push them back together. All right. Another thing that you can put on birds are what are called auxiliary markers. Now, you put an auxiliary marker on if you want to be able to ID the bird from a distance. What I have to do with almost all of my birds is I have to actually re-catch it. I'm going to put my hands on it again and read the number on the band to get data from it. Okay, with auxiliary markers, you don't have to do that. So for example, this golden eagle here, it's an immature bird. You see it has bands on it, but also they put what's called a petigial tag on both wings, because most of the time when you see these birds, they're soaring over you. So somebody banded this bird and marked it, and if someone saw it, you could say, I saw red number 47 golden eagle, and then that would give some scientists some data. You can also put what are called color bands on, and this is what I do with black-crested titmice and with seaside sparrows. Is Tim talking after me?
Yes.
Okay. Tim Brush, who's going to follow me, he and I collaborate on a lot of stuff, and he's doing color banding on clay-colored thrushes and green jays, so he'll tell you about that. And so what you do is you put the federal band, the metal band on right here, and then you have a combination of colors that you put on there. And that way, again, you can look at that bird and you don't have to catch it, and you say, okay, that's left leg yellow over silver and double red. And so you'll know what bird that is. And I'm showing you that one because that's that bird. You're not impressed with this word? Okay, you're supposed to say, what's so special about, well, yeah, that's what you do first. Okay, you go, ooh, and then you say, what's so special about that bird?
What's so special about that bird?
Okay, I'll tell you. This is a black-crested titmouse. We have these guys all over the place. You can have them in your yard if you have a feeder up. And this is the oldest one ever known. Okay, I know that because I put those bands on him, and then we keep seeing him where y'all are going to come if you show up on Saturday at Cactus Creek Ranch. So we might see this bird again where we can add to his age.
How old is he? How old is he now?
I've got to double check. He's at least 8 years and 9 months maybe. I have to double check and see, but yeah, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how you age birds. You always have to use a minimum number. All right, and then you have other bands that are not real big. Those go on a hummingbird. Okay, now I don't ban hummingbirds because hummingbirds are a pain in the rear. Okay, they get stressed and I just don't like to mess with them. And these stupid bands, okay. The bands, when I get bands, I get them from the bird, aptly named Bird Banding Lab. Okay, it's a division of the USGS, U.S. Geologic Service. And so what they send me is they'll send me what's called a string of bands. And there'll be 100 on the string, okay? And they already look like that, okay? So, but hummingbird bands are different. Hummingbird banders get these bands in, and it's like a sheet of aluminum. And then they have to cut it out and cut it to the right size, and then they have to go in, and because you cut this with a pair of scissors, every time you cut it, you're gonna leave a sharp edge. So then they have to go in with a little tiny file and file all around the inside and the outside of their bands before they can use them. Yeah, so it's not fun. All right, who bans birds? Well, bird banders ban birds, yes. Okay, but how do you get to ban birds legally? Okay, well, the first thing you have to do is get a federal bird banding permit. And it's issued by the Bird Banding Lab that's part of the USGS. These are really hard to get, okay? You have to be trained, you have to know what you're doing, you have to have a reason to ban. You can't just say, oh, I like birds, so I'm gonna try to ban them. Okay, so you've got to go through a process, you've got to get letters of recommendations, you've got to write up a bunch of stuff. So it's really hard to get. In Texas, you also have to have what's called a scientific collecting permit. Now, that's not hard to get if you have this. Because on the application for the bird banding one, the first thing is, do you have a federal bird banding permit, and what's the number? And so basically, if you're able to get this, which is really hard to do, they say, okay, this guy's been vetted, he can get this. All right, so the division of people that have them, there's only about a couple of thousand people in the US that have banding permits. Okay, there's not very many. And about half of those are not regular people. Well, they're not regular banders. Okay, it's mostly like college professors that'll get their banding permit, and they'll have one specific thing they want to do, and then when they're through with that study, they really don't band anymore. I band all the time year round, so I guess I'm over here, a vocational ornithologist. Like I said, the biggest chunk are university folks, and in government agencies, they especially band a bunch of game birds. Okay. All right. How many birds have been banded? Well, I'll tell you. Now, I apologize for this slide because when I see a PowerPoint that has a whole bunch of writing on it, I just get furious, okay? But this is the only way I can put it together, all right? So, this is the number of bandings. Now, this is up until 2011, from 1960 to 2011. That's the only form they had it in. So I got that. And this number of bandings is the number of birds that actually have had a band put on them. And number of encounters are when somebody encounters the bird, finds the band, finds the dead bird with the band, something, away from where you banded it. So, like at Cactus Creek on Saturday, we're gonna set up for under feeders, so we're gonna catch hopefully, we're gonna catch a whole bunch of red-winged blackbirds. All right, so if I recapture one of my red-winged blackbirds that I banded, it does not go here. It's not called an encounter. But if somebody finds one of my red-winged blackbirds over in McAllen and reports it, then it becomes an encounter. Okay? All right, so as you can see, ducks and geese and doves and pigeons get banded quite frequently, okay, because they're game birds and the states like to know what's going on with their game birds. But down here, the little guys, there's way, way, way more of them banded than anything else. 33 million and some. But look at all these encounters. There's a lot here, there's not all that many here. So this puts it in easier to see form. About every year, about 57 million birds are banded. Or no, total banded, about 1 million a year, excuse me, about 1 million a year. There have been a total of 3 million recoveries, and so that's about 65,000 a year. But look at the makeup. Most of the birds banded are not game birds, but what makes up, they only make up 31%, but look at the monster share of the recoveries. Okay, how come? Yeah, there's a built-in recovery system on birds that are hunted. The hunters catch them, I mean, they shoot them, and then they turn in the information. Now, used to, a long time ago, the bird banding lab would make you send the band in to get data on it. They don't do that anymore because nobody wanted to send the bands in because they wanted to keep them as souvenirs, right? Okay, because I know duck hunters do that. Duck hunters put the band on their lanyard that holds their duck call. Okay, yeah, they've got them there. Now, don't feel bad because we get a lot of data from hunters. Okay, so even if you don't like hunting, that's okay. But we do get a lot of data from these guys. But nowadays, all you have to do, if you ever find a band, any kind of band anywhere, all you do is Google bird banding lab. It'll throw you onto their homepage, and right in the middle of their homepage says how to report a bird band. You click on it, give them the data, give them the information that it's a few lines of information you give them, and then when you enter it, as long as the bander has entered that data, you will instantly get back where it was banded, who banded it, how long ago, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really nice system nowadays. All right. How many birds have I banded? Okay. You're supposed to ask the question. So.
How many birds?
Okay. All right.
How many birds have you banded?
How many birds have you banded?
Okay, since you asked, I'll tell you. As of January of this year, I banded 14,614, and I've recaptured 2,500. So that's okay for somebody that has to work and really only gets to band during the year on weekends. So that's not too bad. And so I banded 187 different species. This is 188 now, and then I've recaptured 66 different species. Something else I do for the zoo is if the zoo gets a native bird and they rehab it and they won't let it, and they're right before they let it go, they call me and I go over and put a band on it so we can maybe kind of track them a little bit. So on Tuesday. No, it was last Thursday. Yeah, I went over and banded the osprey. That was the first osprey I banded. So now it's up to 188. All right, Karen.
Where do you band birds?
Okay, well, I'll tell you. This is my main spot. I've banded way more birds there than anywhere else. This is, Texas Parks and Wildlife has a lot of areas around the valley, and in sum total, they're called the Las Palomas Wildlife Management Area. But it's not just one area, it encompasses all these different areas that are spread all the way through the valley. This one is located about halfway between Rio Hondo and Arroyo City on the Arroyo. Okay, some of y'all might know where it is. I also banned seaside sparrows in Laguna Atascosa. Y'all will be going with me to Cactus Creek. I also banned at Southmost Preserve. Do y'all know where that is? It's down just east of Sable Palm Grove. Okay. Also, I abandoned another one of their units called Longoria. It's over north of Santa Rosa, over by the sugar mill. I abandoned Bahia Grande. And by the way, when you go to the island, and right when you get to Laguna Vista, you can kind of look out on the right over there, and you see that just big wide open space out there. Okay, right there's where I banned at Bahia Grande, and I have never seen as many rattlesnakes there as I see every time we go there. One time we went there, we found 7 rattlesnakes. So I wouldn't go wandering around in there. And then another place I banned is at Quinta Mazatlan, but Tim and his wife ban there mostly now because they're sub-permittees on my permit.
How much does it cost to ban birds?
Well, I'm not gonna tell you because if I did, you might tell my wife and then I couldn't do it anymore. Okay, it is not cheap. Okay, the nets, each net costs about $100 and they constantly get torn up. Any and everything in nature has a grudge against my nets. Okay, they just attack them from every angle. And so they get torn to pieces all the time. And then I'll show you, when we go Saturday, I'll show you the other stuff. Even the pliers you use. There's special pliers, they have to be specially drilled, and they're about $70 a piece. So I have to pay for everything that I use. The only thing I don't pay for are the bands. Mm-hmm. They'll send me the bands, but everything else I have to pay for. All right.
How do you ban birds?
Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so first of all, you gotta find somewhere to put your nets, and hopefully you don't look as clueless as me and my son do. Trying to find a place to put it, but I take rebar and pound it in the ground, and then I have electrical conduit I buy at Home Depot, and then we stretch the net between them. And then you spread the net out, and then the birds will fly into it and get tangled. All right, now these nets are called mist nets. And so if you look at them, I've got this picture here for a reason. Okay, everybody sees the net right there, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody can see that. Mm-hmm. And so you're sitting there looking and saying, why would a stupid bird fly in that net? So I can see that. I can see that, you know, birds should be able to avoid that. Well, there's one. When you're looking at it straight on, especially when there's vegetation in the background, it's almost impossible to see. So a net, just like that, is right there. It's opened up. You see how it's opened up with the loops right there? That one opened up too. And so what the birds do is they fly through the brush, and what I think happens is birds, when they fly through the brush, they're used to kind of, you know, hitting things with their wings and running into spider webs and things like that. So I think when they hit the net, they think they're going to fly through it, and they don't. They fly and they fall down into it makes a little cup down there along what's called trammel line, and they fall down and then they get tangled in there. And they look like that, okay? So the hardest thing and the trickiest thing to do whenever you're doing birds is this right here. It's getting the bird out. What? I keep doing that. Hey, let's go back to this one. Oh, first of all, you know what that bird is?
No.
It's a great kiskadee. It's a bird that makes a lot of noise. And if you have any kind of water in your backyard, he will come and he'll hang around your backyard. All right, but mostly they can get tangled any sort of way, but the thing that gets tangled mostly are the feet and the wings, and then gets around the head. And so when I'm training someone to help me, it takes a while before I let them try to take birds out on their own, because this is where you can harm a bird, okay? And I'm responsible for all the birds that I come into contact with. So I don't let anybody touch birds until I'm satisfied that they're not gonna harm them. All right, so kiskadees are medium-sized birds. This bird is one bird that I like, that we've got a study going on, and actually we published some stuff on this guy. This is, first of all, I didn't know what that is. It's a winter resident. It's only here in the winter.
The yellow rim warbler?
Not yellow rumped, it's a warbler.
Yellow.
It is an orange-crowned warbler. It is the worst named bird in the world, except maybe the ringneck duck. Look up ringneck duck in your field guide, okay? It's got a bright ring on its bill. The ring on its neck, you can barely see it. So that's a badly named bird. This bird has an orange crown. The males do. Females don't even have one, or have a little bitty one. And you have to blow on that to even see it. Now, I can tell you how that bird got named. It got named because y'all heard of John J. Audubon, right? Okay. Well, when he was going around doing all his stuff, you know what those guys did, don't you? I don't want to disillusion any of y'all. Okay. When they were trying to find out and name birds and do all this kind of stuff, they would go out during the day and they would shoot every bird they could find. Then they would put them in their bags and they'd go back, and then at night they would lay them out, and then they would look and see if it had been identified before. If it was something that hadn't been identified, they described it, and then they prepared them so they could give the specimens to universities and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you get a male, you can get males that have a really nice orange crown when you blow on it. So I'm sure that the first one of these that was ever described was one with a really orange crown. But this is a horrible name for this bird. All right, but you see how these guys get caught in the net and they've fallen down into a little pocket. All right, and so we get them out, and then we put them in white cotton bags so they stay cool, and we put one bird per bag. Then we line them up, and I always process the ones that have been hanging the longest. I don't like a bird to hang very long. So I run through them real fast. And you'll see that if we have a lot of birds, how I do that on Saturday. This is kind of the setup, what it looks like. I'll have my table, I'll have my data book, or my data recording book. This is all the nets are in the bag, and all my banding supplies are there. And that has all my bands in it. And so that's what a typical setup looks like. Inside, you have wing cord measurers. I use that to measure the tail. That's the sizer for the leg, because some birds will take 2 size bands, so you have to check and make sure you're putting the right size band on. Here's my calipers to measure things, and then these are the pliers that you open the band up and put on the bird's leg and then close it. And these are the bands, and what else is in there? Money, yeah, see.
You have to pay one
Yeah, remember that. Remember that location right there. All right. Oh, and then this is the Bird Bender's Bible. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is ID the bird. You're not going to get a bird banding permit unless you can identify all the birds that you might encounter. So I have to know all the birds that could possibly be in South Texas and all the ones in northern Mexico, because I have banded several birds that aren't supposed to be here. Okay, and I'll show you some of those here in a minute. So first thing you have to do is ID it. Then you have to make sure that that you're putting the right size band on. A lot of birds take only one size band. Olive sparrows, common bird around here, always takes a 1B. Green jays though, they take either a 2 or a 3. So every time I catch a green jay, I've got to check his leg, see which size to put on. So you take the band, and there's the band, and I've just closed it. Now these holes are drilled to fit certain size bands. So you open the band up, you put it's got a little peg on top of the pliers, and so you put that on there, and then you can pull it open, and what it does, it takes the band, and it does this to it. And then you put it in the right hole, put it on the leg, and then push it closed, and then it's gonna be a perfect circle. And you gotta make sure it moves up and down the leg and move around, because if it doesn't, you've messed up. But if you're doing that, you don't need to be banding birds.
Excuse me,
Yes.
is the green jay the reason for the 2 sizes? Is it the age of the bird?
No. I'm glad you asked that. No. No. So, okay. Birds have 2 systems how they take care of their young. Birds are either altricial or precocial. Okay, altricial birds are birds that make a nest. They have a nest. They lay eggs in it. They sit on them. The babies hatch. They don't have any feathers on them, and then they grow feathers. The parents feed them, and then they at some point they leave the nest. Okay, precocial birds are like chickens. Okay, when they hatch, the young can start following mom around immediately. Okay, like within less than an hour, they're following mom around. Chachalacas are precocial birds. All right, that's something that people ask me all the time. Oh, that bird's a baby, when I catch them in the nest. When that bird leaves the nest, he's as big as he's ever going to be. Okay, you don't have, when altricial birds, you don't have birds leaving the nest and then growing bigger. When they leave, they're as big as they're ever going to be. So they're not babies. They're just little birds. Okay? All right, and so that's what the band should be, go around, and I mean, this is a still picture, but it's supposed to move up and down. And this bird is a bronze cowbird. All right, and then sometimes you gotta look, because sometimes when you recapture a bird, the band gets scuffed a little bit, and so you gotta have a magnifier to look at it. And then we have, this is our data book where we put the data in while you gather it, and then we have birds hanging. And this is the data book. We have to keep up with the date, the band number, what species it is, age, sex, and then that's the minimum I have to report to the bird banding lab. I have to report every 3 months. I have to send in all the birds that I caught. Like I sent in my one for the winter, I sent it in on Monday. So you can take other measurements if you want to. I take mass, wing and tail. I sometimes take these, it depends on the bird. I keep up with where I caught it, the location, the time, and then there'll be some comments. And so different birds you take different data on. Let's see, what's next? Oh, okay, so that's measuring a wing. You put it has a stopper there, and you put the wing up next to it, and then you measure it down there. And by the way, that's an eastern screech owl. They don't like to be held, okay?
Do they bite? Do any of those birds bite?
I don't care if they bite. What I don't want is those. Birds of prey, well, I'll take that back, okay? First of all, birds of prey, the way they kill things is they kill it with their talons. So when I'm holding a hawk, I watch the feet. If I get bit by a hawk, I don't care. Sometimes they draw blood, sometimes they don't. What I'm worried about are the talons, because I've been punctured by talons before, and it's not fun, okay? one time I get distracted a lot, by the way. Okay, so I was holding a red-tailed hawk, and some people were driving by because we caught it beside the road. And so we were processing it, and so they got out, they started asking questions, and I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. And so I was holding it, and then I kind of let it get a little close to my body, and it swiped with its talons, and it stuck a talon into my skin, under my skin, and then it came out right there. So that's not fun. Now, birds that bite. Some birds do bite really hard. Cardinals, okay? If any of y'all went to Harlingen High, I'm sorry, I cannot stand cardinals. Okay? They hurt when they bite, okay? And then another bird you gotta be really careful with is a shrike. Okay, do y'all know what shrikes are? Okay. Shrikes kill a lot of things. Shrikes will kill birds and little mammals that are larger than them. But they don't have strong talons like birds of prey do. Shrikes are a passerine. So all of their strength is in their head. That's why their head is so big as compared to the rest of their body. If you don't want to get bit by a shrike will bloody you up really quick. All right. And by the way, I was telling you that these are aluminum bands. The bands that I have to put on cardinals are stainless steel because a cardinal will crush that band. The aluminum band like that, will reach down and you'll just crush it with his bill. All right, and so here we are still going. I've got a mockingbird. I'm measuring the tail. Let's see. Here I'm measuring we've already banded him, and so I'm measuring the culmen there with the calipers. And then I'm weighing it. Okay, I'm gonna transition over to digital scales, but I'm kind of hard-headed, so I've still got these spring scales. I'm using pantyhose there, okay, but I have to buy my own pantyhose. My wife will not buy them for me. She's just being ornery. And so I have to go buy them. So I went to Walmart, when I first had to buy them by myself, and I didn't know what I was buying. And I found them in those little things that look like they come out of gum machines, those little plastic things. Okay, so I get a couple of those. And so then I try to explain to the woman that I'm buying, I use these for birds. She looked at me like I was crazy. So nowadays, I just don't even explain. I let them think what they want to. All right. Now, okay, identification guide to North American birds. All right, some of you guys are starting off in this class and you're starting to learn things and you may want to learn more about birds. And you see this book on Amazon and you say, hey, I want to identify North American birds. Okay. Don't buy this book. Okay? Do not buy this book unless you're an insomniac, because this book doesn't have any pictures in it. It has a handful of line drawings, but it is just text. It is made only for bird banders. The only way you get any use out of this book is holding a bird, looking at the book. Okay? Don't get this book. All right, so we got to age birds. Now, aging birds is tricky because when you have a bird and you look at it in the tree over there, sometimes you can tell the young birds, the birds that have just hatched, they stay in that plumage for about a year and then they molt. Okay, birds go through a pretty much complete molt every year. Okay, where they just change out their feathers. Have y'all ever seen, at the end of the summer, the gray-tailed grackles look so ratty? Okay. That's because they finished nesting and now they're undergoing a molt. Okay. In the late summer, birds look horrible. And then by the beginning of the fall, they look nice because they've got their new feathers. Okay. But, so sometimes you can tell a young bird from an older bird. But once they become adults, you can't say, oh, there's that cardinal's 7 years old, and oh, that cardinal's 2 years old. You can't do that, okay? You can do it you can just say that it's a young bird or an old bird. Okay, so the terminology we use is hatch year. So, a bird that's a hatch year bird is a bird that was born in the spring, early summer, and it stays a hatch year bird until right here, and that is January 1st. And January 1st, every bird in the whole wide world gets a birthday. And it becomes a second year bird because it's now in the second year of its life. Okay? A after hatch year bird is a bird that's an adult during the spring and summer. It's a bird that, had young and all that kind of stuff. But again, January 1st, every bird gets a birthday, so these guys become ASY, after second year. Okay? So that's how scientists age birds. Now there's a few birds, a few passerines, and some birds of prey that you can age later than that. You can actually go to the third year, but 90-something% of the birds, probably 95% of the birds, that's the terminology you're using right there. And these birds, these SY birds, in the spring are almost impossible to tell from these birds. So pretty quick, these just start getting called AHY birds. Okay?
So what's the difference between a second year bird and an after hatch year?
Well, because an after hatch year, you're saying, I know this is an adult bird. Sometimes on birds, you can tell young birds into the beginning of the winter, you can still say they still have some hatch year characteristics, but they lose them by spring. And so so pretty much you're just saying, that's an adult bird. I really don't know what it is, but I know it's an adult bird. Okay, as long as it's into that time period, that's okay. For our purposes, we just call them AHY and they're adults. All right, so how do you age them? Well, you can look at plumage. There's different plumage characteristics. There's different molts, and these are really, this is what you're looking at when you're looking at the Bible. Okay, there's different molt patterns. Like for example, with molt. Well, plumage it's just what the feathers look like, and I'll show you that on Saturday. Molt it's different for different birds. Like for the grackles we talked about, what they'll do is they'll start losing feathers, some of their primary feathers. They don't lose them all at once because they still have to fly. Okay? So they'll replace one, and then as it's growing in, then they'll drop another one, and then that one will be about the right length, and then they'll start growing another one. And so you can look at that pattern of replacement and sometimes be able to tell if it's a hatch year or after hatch year bird. Some birds, like ducks, they lose all their flight feathers. As soon as they're, ducks and geese, as soon as they are through breeding, they lose all their flight feathers. So they can't fly. They basically are flightless for part of the summer. And so when they go to, this is when they catch a bunch of ducks, when they band them, you know what they do? They go out in a boat, and they have somebody sitting at the front with a big net, and they go by and they just scoop them up, put them in the boat, they band them, get their data, and then just set them back in the water. Because that's where they stay. They stay in the water. They don't get up and run around on the ground much. The exception to that are geese. Up in the tundra, when they want to catch geese, they wait till they're flightless like that, and then they'll take a little mesh kind of fencing thing, and they'll make a big V, and then they'll just get them and herd them in there, run them into the net, and then close it off, and then they'll just step over it, pull them out, put bands on them, and then just let them go, and then they'll grab another one and go like that. So it's pretty interesting. Okay, and sculling, which is something I have trouble with. But here's what happens with sculling. Okay, birds they've got hollow bones, so they can fly, so they don't have a lot of weight. They also don't have a lot up here on their skull. And so young birds, what you can do is you can move the feathers and you can look, and the top of the head will look pink. The reason it looks pink is because there's only one layer of bone there. And you're looking through that bone and you're seeing the blood from the brain. Okay. As they get older and then through the fall, they grow a second layer of bone on it. And then once you can look and you just see white, then you know that it's not a young bird anymore. It's grown that second layer of bone. But that's hard to see sometimes. Hard for me to see anyway. So I usually use plumage and molt when I'm aging them. All right, so there we are looking at the molt pattern. This is what bird banders do. They get really excited about molt patterns on Carolina wrens. Okay. All right. That girl, she has a blog. It's called Bird Chick. It's kind of interesting if you ever want to see it. That guy is the head of conservation for Houston Audubon Society. All right, sexing birds. Okay, Karen, you can turn away. You're not old enough to see this. Okay. All right. Now, here's your biology lesson for the day. All right, birds have one opening where reproductive material and waste products come out of. It's called the cloaca. Okay, you have two. They have one. Now, during the breeding season with some passerines, the cloaca right there will swell up and it'll stay swollen all through the breeding season. Okay? They're pretty sure that it does that so to help them deposit sperm, but they're not exactly 100% sure. But that's probably what it is. Now the interesting thing is, and so I could be able to call this olive sparrow a male olive sparrow because of that. So I obviously caught this bird in the summer sometime. If I caught this same bird in December, that ain't there. It shrinks, it just recedes, and it looks just like the cloaca on a female. So sometimes you can tell birds that are identically plumaged, you can tell the difference between them. All right, now this bird, this is a green jay, and that is called a brood patch. Okay? Why do birds have feathers? Huh? To stay warm. Okay, so they're very good insulation. Why do birds sit on eggs? So does it make sense that you have egg, feathers, and bird? No, it doesn't. Okay, so what happens is birds, mainly the females, but some males, that sit on eggs and brood young will develop a brood patch. What happens is their hormones achieve this and they drop all these feathers. It also becomes more vascularized, it becomes more wrinkled because they've added some blood vessels there. And so what they do is when they sit on the eggs, they'll move back and forth and they're moving these contour feathers out of the way so that can touch the eggs, the skin. Now, when this bird's out there flying, you don't see this. The only reason you see that is because I'm blowing on it. Okay, birds out there that are just flying around, the contour feathers cover it up. And so that's why next time you watch one of the nature shows and a bird comes up to a nest or a bird comes up to a little one, what they do is they do this thing where they go back and forth, back and forth. What they're doing is they're moving these feathers so the skin touches either the eggs or the little ones. And again, this bird, if I caught it in December, there will be feathers there. There's not skin there, there's feathers. Okay? All right. Now, sometimes the bands wear. So this band is supposed to be this thick. And so what I have to do occasionally is change the bands out, because one of the things that I'm concerned with is longevity. All right, and we also take pictures. Yeah, that's a good picture for a cardinal. Usually they're biting you. And people get excited about taking pictures. Now, some birds don't appreciate their contribution to science. One is a black-crested titmouse. They bite you like crazy. And then they have this little terribly high squeaky call that causes the women to all go, ooh, okay, while they're biting you. All right. Same with these guys. They don't like to be held either. It's a green jay. And then what they'll do is they'll raise their crest up, but they hurt when they bite because they've got a little hook right there. And so when they bite you, they start twisting their head back and forth. And so it doesn't really feel good. All right. Now, one thing they call me the bird whisperer. And the reason they call me that is because I can whisper to birds, and then they try to murder me. That is a picture that got caught at just the exact right time. That is a ringed kingfisher. That's the only one I've ever caught. And so I was trying to make sure that the picture looked good, and I had my hand out there, and that guy, I can tell you now how kingfishers can hold on to fish, because that is a strong, strong bite, okay? And it took me a while to get him to let go. And when I got him to let go,
Did you whisper to him?
no, I wasn't whispering. And it looked like somebody had taken a knife and cut the top of my fingers there, and cut the top of my fingers on the bottom of my hand. And just sliced it. Okay, so, yeah, that was, it's a funny picture, but it wasn't funny at the time. Yeah.
You don't like wearing gloves, or it's just hard to wear gloves while you're doing something?
No, I don't wear gloves at all for doing any of that, even with the raptors. Okay, because when you wear gloves, you don't
Yeah.
feel everything. Okay, you gotta feel everything. The only reason those guys wear gloves with raptors, you know, the guys that hold it out and they come land on them, it's because they're actually landing on them. When I'm holding a raptor, I'm not letting him get on my arm, I'm holding him. But yeah, that's, I don't see, I guess maybe some people use gloves, I don't do it though. All right, so weather conditions. First of all, rain. If it rains, we don't band. We just don't. It'll get all my equipment wet, birds will get wet, but we just don't do it. But the thing that messes me up most is wind. Because when it's windy, the nets flop around, the birds can see them better. And then also, the wind will pooch the nets out. And so when the birds hit it, especially the little ones, they don't fall into the little bag to get caught. They just hit it and they're still blowing against it, and they just kind of turn around and fly back out. So, yeah, if it's real windy, we usually don't band, because it's kind of a waste of time. Now, what I have to worry about in the summer is heat and humidity. And because down here, heat and humidity will kill birds real quick. Birds have a really high metabolism. And so they're individually tough, but if you get them a little out of whack, they can have problems. And so in summertime, I'll quit banding sometimes at 9 o'clock, 9:30. But I can tell, I've been doing it long enough, I know when it's starting to get too warm to band.
What's the earliest you go out?
Huh?
What time in the morning do you start?
Well, I usually get there at daylight. I don't get there before daylight. You can get there before daylight, and you can catch parrots, and you can catch screech owls. Screech owls are actually pretty easy to catch. You just make a screech owl sound, they'll come down to investigate it. But then the problem with that is you'll also catch bats. Because these nets are ideal for catching bats. And I hate to get bats out of the net. So I always wait till, I don't start putting up nets till it's daylight. Or if I see bats flying around, I'll just wait till they quit flying. So, all right. So, why band birds? Why go to all this trouble and do this? For me, it's trying to get everything that I can into the scientific literature. So I'm worried about publishing. And so we published a few things with my banding data. Tim and I just got a short paper on orange-crowned warbler sight fidelity. And we'll talk about sight fidelity in just a second. We just got that published, and then got another article that's gonna be published next year on seaside sparrows. So that's my motivation, is to get what I'm doing into the scientific literature. All right, now, one thing that's important is longevity. How long do birds live in the wild? The only way you can know that is with banding data. That's it. There's no other way. So anytime you ever see birds live this long, they get it from banding data, okay? Because captive data means nothing, okay? Captive data means nothing. Birds always live longer in captivity because they don't have predators, they don't have all this stuff, they're given, you know, good diets, all this kind of stuff. So if you're trying to figure out how long does a typical bird live in the wild, you have to use banding data. All right, so olive sparrows, like I told you, is a very common bird down here. Little guy, stays on the ground, has a real small home range. One was originally banded in 1992 as a hatch year, after hatch year. It was recaught a total of 14 times. And his last recapture, I caught it on August 28, 1999. And it was a minimum 8 years and 3 months, okay? So when it was caught, if you say it's a year, an adult, you can only say, well, we know it's the minimum of a year old. You can't say the maximum. That bird might have been 4 years old when it was caught, but there's no way you can tell that. So that's why you always put a minimum age on this. The only way you don't put a minimum age is if when you caught the bird, you knew it was a hatch year bird, okay? All right, and so that's the oldest olive sparrow ever recorded, okay? And
Are you or by anyone?
by anyone in the history of the universe. Yes. And I also have these. That is the oldest long-billed thrasher in the history of the universe. That's the oldest black-crested. You know, I told you a minute ago, somebody asked how old that bird was. It's older now, so we may add to it. Bronze cowbird, 8 years, 0 months. Clay-colored thrush, 5'7". And I just got the woodpecker a few months ago. It was 4 years, 11 months. So these are the oldest birds ever recorded for these species. So that's, you know, you're getting some good information. Why do I have that bird there? Does anybody know what that bird is?
An albatross.
Uh-huh.
An
Sarah,
albatross.
what is it?
Albatross?
It's a Lasian albatross from Midway Island. Why am I showing you that bird?
Did you go banding there?
No. I wish. I'm showing you that because that's the oldest known wild bird. Okay, this bird even has a name. It's called Wisdom. It comes back to Midway Island. It was first banded in 1956, and it was at least 5 years old at the time. Okay, because some birds, like I said, you can tell that they're a little bit older. And so it has been rebanded several times. As of this year, it was at least 67 years old. And last time I checked, the egg's probably hatched by now, but it was sitting on an egg back in January when I checked. 67 years old, at least 67 years old, because it was at least 5 when it was first banded. At least 67, and every year when it comes back, it lays an egg and raises a chick.
Go back to the picture.
Where's Midway Island?
Hawaii.
Way, way, way out in the Pacific Ocean.
There's no way it could be a mistake, like the band came off or, I
No.
don't know, 67 years.
No, because look, they rebanded it. Remember I told you that if the band starts to get old, you actually take it off, you know it's that bird, and you put a new band on with a new number. So they've kept track of it. What?
When did they start banding birds?
When?
Yeah.
1956.
A long time ago. Back in the 16 and 1700s, there's accounts of people getting, I think it was storks. It was some type of wading water bird, and they were tying strings around them. to see if they came back. And they started doing metal, I think, in the late 1700s, maybe early 1800s. But it didn't get, until about the 1900s, early 1900s, it didn't get to where it was kind of systematic.
Is this, I just have a question, is that age kind of unusual? I mean, it's very old to me, but is it unusual for them, that particular
I
type?
don't know, that's what, we
I
don't
mean, are there
know.
others that have been followed? Are there other birds?
Other albatrosses or just
Yeah.
other birds?
Other albatrosses?
I don't know.
Okay.
No, I'm sure they've got a lot of bands on other albatrosses, because albatrosses just sit there. Okay, you can just walk up and pick them up and put a band on. Well, and you can see the band right down there. Okay, so yeah, they're not hard to band, so I'm sure they're watching them, but, you know, I don't know how many were banded back in the 50s, so.
So when you said you check on it, do you go to a website and see the status?
Yeah, you can go to a website, you can Google Wisdom the Albatross, and it has its own website. All right, site fidelity, this is the thing that interests me the most. Okay. Y'all know where we live, right? We're down here. What site fidelity means is that a bird either stays in the same place all the time, or it goes away for a while and it comes back to the same place. Okay? What I'm interested in is site fidelity in winter resident birds here. So I'm interested in the birds that go way up here and breed and then come back down here. Okay? This is another orange-crowned warbler. I've had lots of these birds that I've recaptured between years. In other words, I capture it one winter, it goes up to Canada because that's the closest they breed to us. And so it's coming back, and it's coming back to the same spot. So how many of you guys can I walk out to the parking lot out here and tell you, okay, I want you to walk to Canada. No signs, no roads, no nothing. You just walk to Canada. And then when you get there, I want you to hang around for about 3 or 4 months. And then I want you to turn around and walk back. And I don't want you just to get to the valley. I want you to be in this parking lot. Okay, who could do that? Oh. And you're much better than the rest of us because nobody could do that. But these guys can. I have caught these birds in the same net before that I caught them the previous year. So they're not coming back just to the valley. They're coming back to the exact spot. Because I have people ask me, said, do you know, I have this bird, I see it every winter, is it the same bird? Well, the only way you can say for sure is you can get bands on them, but it looks like that it might be the same bird. And I get the same thing with this bird, which is a house wren. I get the same thing with this bird, which is a common yellowthroat. I get the same thing with this bird, which is a hermit thrush. These are all birds that breed north of us and then come back down. That bird, that's a Lincoln sparrow. And then there's this bird.
Good, it's beautiful.
That is a male American kestrel. They're only here in the winter, and I catch and band these guys too. And that's the male, and that's the female. So, you know, the males are better looking, you know, just like in most animals. Oh wait, I say that out loud. All right, but this particular bird, see, it's got a band on it. There's a raptor bander in Harlingen. His name's Bill Clark. He's pretty famous. He's written a bunch of books, and so he and I band sometimes. And he called me a couple of years ago, and he said, "Hey," he said, "I think I caught one of your birds." And so I said, "Okay." So he gave me the band number, and I looked, and I said, "Okay, yeah, I caught that bird. I banded it." I said, "Where did you catch it?" So he told me. He said it was up in Willacy County, and it was at an old abandoned kind of building that had an old caliche parking lot. And I said, "Okay." He said, "You catch it in a parking lot?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, okay. I said, was the bird sitting on the light fixture that comes out on the southwest corner of the building? He said, yeah. I said, yeah, okay. I had caught that bird 6 years earlier at the exact same place, on the same light fixture. Okay, now this guy goes to Canada. Okay, one reason I know is because another one of my birds I banded, somebody found it dead in Alberta. Okay, so these guys go a long way. How do they get back here? Who knows? All right, so briefly, so we need to wrap this up. Briefly, I do a seaside sparrow study at Laguna Atascosa. This is a unique subspecies of seaside sparrow that is having some problems, mainly because of black mangroves and water rising. Okay, and the subspecies here, that's the adult and that's the young. They could possibly go extinct within 10 years. Okay, so we're working on that. I've got some colleagues from Tennessee and from up at Corpus and from San Antonio, and we're doing things, and hopefully we can help this guy out a little bit. Now, interesting things that I've caught. I'll just run through these. That is an American woodcock. He ain't supposed to be here. Okay. Now it's common north of us in the winter. They're fairly common, but they're in forests. They're a forest bird. I caught that down here for some reason. I don't know why it was here. That is a green-breasted mango. That is a tropical hummingbird that we caught in the backyard over here off of Zillock Road. And nobody knew it was there. We set up some nets, and then this guy flew into it. I'm not sure. It's one of the only one or two birds, green-breasted mangoes, that have ever been banded in the U.S. That is the little bird with the big name. That is a northern beardless tyrannulet. This is a bird that people come down here. Again, it's a tropical bird that just barely gets up here into the valley. People come down here to see it, and it's one bird they always want to see. So it's fairly rare. That is a yellow-green vireo. That is another tropical bird that just shows up here, and it'll get on the bird alert if somebody sees one, and everybody will flock over and try to see it. I've caught 4 of those, all within 50 feet of each other over a period of a couple of years. So that's pretty interesting. That is a tropical parula. I caught that over at Quinta Mazatlan. That is another tropical bird that just barely gets up here and that all the bird watchers want to see. That is the rarest bird I've ever caught. That is a golden crowned warbler. I caught that bird in the summer. That's the only time it's ever been seen in the U.S. in the summer. And I think it's the only one that's ever been banded in the U.S. And I got bird watchers mad at me because I caught it and banded it and let it go, and I didn't tell anybody about it. But they couldn't have gotten to where I was at anyway. I was at Laguna in a place that they couldn't have gotten to. So, but yeah, they were really mad at me. I get bird watchers mad at me.
What if you would catch it and then release it somewhere else?
No, you don't do that. You catch it and you let it go where you caught it, always. That's a fox sparrow. That is, again, that's a bird north of us that is fairly common north of us, but this is the first one ever seen in the valley. It was at the Valley Nature Center. And so I was doing a banding demo over there that I'd already scheduled that before this bird even showed up. I wasn't trying to catch it. I put up my nest and I caught it. So I banded it. I mean, I'm going to band it if I catch it. So, and then I let it go, and then it disappeared. And then I had all the bird watchers mad at me again. They accused me of killing it. They accused me of moving it. They accused me of all kinds of stuff. And they were saying not nice things about me. And then about a week later, it showed back up with its band on, so I had the last laugh.
What do they want you to do? Put it in a cage until they get there
I
to see
don't
it?
know, they just, some bird watchers don't like banders.
Oh.
I don't know if they think we disrupt things, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is.
Have you ever had one die on you when you were branding it?
Yep. I have about one bird a year die on me, which isn't too bad, okay? But I also do a lot of things that other banders don't, which is I run my nets more often than other banders do because I don't like birds sitting in them very long. Now that lowers my catch rate, but I would rather not have the birds sit in the net very long. And then I also shut down early. You know, even if I'm catching a lot of birds, if it's starting to get a little warm, I'll shut down. And again, that lowers the number of birds I catch, but I don't know, if anything happens to a bird, it just bothers me for like months. So I'm always overly cautious when I do that. All right, this is a female blue bunting. Okay. Well, that's a female blue bunting, okay? That's a male blue bunting. Okay, female, male. This is another tropical species. Only 3 have ever been banded in the U.S. There's 2 of them. Or, that's the 2 right there.
And were they caught at the same time, same place, or?
Nope, nope, they were caught about a year apart at different ends of the valley. The female was at the Arroyo, Colorado unit, and that's at Quinto Mazatlan.
How big are those?
These guys? Yeah, they're not big enough. All right, and so some things you want to avoid when you're banding, those guys, they're bats. Bats bite you, or they try to bite you. I have gloves when I try to get them off, but they bite through the gloves. I feel their little teeth scraping on my skin. Haven't been bitten yet, but you know, I'm gonna get bit one day. That's an indigo snake. Indigo snakes are real curious snakes. And so I've seen them come up to the net. They're also diurnal snakes, so they're out when people are out. You know, there's the big black snake that people are always scared of. Okay. The way you tell people to not kill them is tell them they eat rattlesnakes, because they do eat rattlesnakes. Tell them that, and they won't kill them. But they'll come up to my net, put their head in and pull back, and it's like they're curious. But what'll happen sometimes is when they put their head in and they go to bring it back, their recurved teeth will hit the net, and then when they feel the resistance, they start to twirl, and so they get all twirled up in the bottom of the net. And so then you have to start at the tail and untwirl them. And then you're untwirling them, you got to put them around your you know, just to try to get them off. And they've got a real strong musk gland. So my wife knows whenever I've had an indigo snake in the net because I stink when I come home. The longest one I've ever got out of the net is this long, from here to the floor.
Wow.
So it's taller than me. That's not a good picture, but that's the best one I got. This stupid guy just hung as a bobcat. He just hung around. I finally had to walk up to him, and I got up to about as far as from here to the counter. Get out of here! I was just hollering at him the whole time. He was sitting there looking at me.
Well, he was hungry, he wanted to eat the birds.
Well, I know, that's what I didn't want to. Get those. What is that?
Coral snake.
Coral snake. Yeah, coral snakes are one of the most common snakes in the valley. Did y'all know that?
Yes.
If you have a backyard, you've had a coral snake in it.
No.
Yes. And then these guys are everywhere. That's a rattlesnake, right by one of my nets. And I've actually gotten bitten by one of these out bird banding before. Yeah, I stepped on one and for some reason he didn't appreciate that. And so I had on tennis shoes, so he turned around and bit through the top of my tennis shoes. So that was not pleasant. All right, and then just some interesting things. This is a long-tailed weasel. We have long-tailed weasels here in the valley. And for some reason, this guy was just jumping around in front of the nets. He wasn't trying to do anything. He was just jumping around. I don't know what was going on with this guy. This is an ocelot.
Well,
I took a guy with me a long time ago
Black one?
to the, no, it's not black, it's got stripes. You're just looking at it from the back. I took a guy, this first time I took this guy with me out banking. Whole time, he knew we were going to the lagoon. He said, "Am I gonna see an ocelot? I'm gonna see an ocelot." I said, "No, you're not gonna see an ocelot." I said, "I've been out here, hundreds of times. I've never seen an ocelot. You're not gonna see an ocelot." So he comes up, I'm right here. I'm right around the corner, processing a mockingbird that's squawking. And so he's watching me, and this guy got up close and took this picture. And if you notice, it's got a collar on. It's one of the ones they were tracking. And so he comes up to me and he says, "I got a picture of ocelot." I said, "No, you don't." I said, our bobcats, like that bobcat I showed you, have a lot of spots on them. They're real spotty, not unlike the ones north of us. I said, people get them mixed up with ocelots all the time. Because another thing, people don't think bobcats have tails. Did y'all know that? People look, and if they see any cat with a tail, they say ocelot. Bobcats have a short tail, okay? So you gotta look close. But anyway, so he comes out there, and I don't know, so he said, "I'll send it to you." And so that's what he sent me, and there it is. And he saw one on his first time. That was a mountain lion that was hanging around. Right down here is where I ran my map station, where I caught birds. And we had a trail camera up by this water. And this guy hung around in there for a few months, and then he left. I don't know where he went. But yeah, we get mountain lions down here occasionally. All right, so I already told you how to report land to the bird banding lab. Thanks to people that I stole images from. And I always end by telling you, you need to drink, if you drink coffee, you need to drink shade-grown coffee. If you don't know what shade-grown coffee is, you need to do some research. But shade-grown coffee has to be grown in the shade. Maxwell House, Folgers, all of those evil sun coffees, they bulldoze the forest to grow those. So if you drink Folgers, you drink Maxwell House, you drink Maryland Club, you are contributing to the destruction of tropical forests. Okay? Shade-grown coffee, especially some that's been certified by the Smithsonian and some of these other guys, it is grown in the shade, so the farmers have to keep their trees. Okay? You pay a little tiny bit more for it, but not enough to make it not worthwhile. So do some research into that, and that's it.